Now you're back. There you go. Welcome in to Roger That Chronicles, a 216 Creators Studio original. Today, above all, some Air Force stories. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am happy, healthy, and terrific. Thank you for asking. Excited about this one.
We are too.
Good week, probably since the last time we saw you. Good things going on.
Yep.
I love it. I love it.
Yep. We're enjoying hosting the podcast, and so it's been a real blessing, and always getting to meet some interesting veterans. So that's cool.
And these two are interesting, from what I've learned.
Yeah.
Strange, interesting, anyone from the service.
So I'll just jump in. My name is Chris with NLMNO, and we are doing Air Force today. So I have two sergeants with me. We've got Tom to my left, and we've got Bill to my right. So how are you guys doing? Thanks for joining the show.
Good. I woke up.
Yep.
It's a start.
That's a good start.
It's always a good thing. Well, great. I'll go ahead and start with you, Tom.
Okay.
So why don't you tell me, like, when you joined the Air Force and what brought you to that decision and what that journey looked like?
Sure. I joined in September of 1967, right out of high school. That was back during the selective service days where everybody had a number and mine was very low. So when I graduated, I have a history of being in the Air Force. My father was career Air Force NCO, 30 years. So he had just got out in May, I believe it was, of 67. And I decided I was going to go into the Air Force. Obviously, I had that history, so I was familiar with that whole scenario. I didn't want to spend some time in the jungle, and I didn't want to be on a boat for 6 months. So the Air Force sounded pretty good. So that was a 4-year enlistment back then. So I was in from 1967 until 1971. And of course, at that particular point in time, I had an option of staying in, just like everybody else. But I elected to get out. I think I had had enough after that period.
Sure.
18 years as a dependent, and then 4 more years as an enlisted guy. I met my wife. I was down in San Antonio, Texas at the time. I had spent 2 years in Alaska at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Beautiful assignment there. And then I transferred down to San Antonio, which was another great thing. So I spent 2 years in Alaska and another 2 years at various bases in the Air Force. Just like everybody else, I went through basic training in Lackland Air Force Base. Then I moved up to Amarillo, and I spent about 4 or 5 months up there doing some technical training. I was an administrative specialist. So I spent some time up there doing that. And then, of course, I went to Alaska. And initially, I was supposed to go to Kotzebue Air Force Station, which is a very small unit, about 1,000, 1,500 people. It's right on the Bering Strait, if you don't know where that's at. It's the closest military installation to Russia. So I think Bering Strait's only like 70 miles wide at that point. So anyway, I reported to Anchorage for some training that they give you prior to going to one of these installations. And during that period of time, we were approached by some administrative people there at Anchorage that they needed people in Anchorage. And if any of us wanted to stay, well, my arm went right up. It was a 1-year tour at Kotzebue, but it was a 2-year tour at Anchorage. But Anchorage is beautiful. So I decided to take that assignment, and I was offered some choices as to what I wanted to do. I ended up selecting being an administrative specialist at the NCO Academy there at Elmendorf, which turned out to be a great assignment. So I was there for 2 years, and then I transferred, like I said previously, to San Antonio. And I went to Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio. At that time, it was called Headquarters, United States Security Service. Now, it's not a military. It was a military police. A lot of people confuse that. It's an intelligence unit. And it's still there, but it's called something else. And I'm not exactly sure what it's called now today. It's changed names a few times since I got out back in 71. But anyway, I met my wife there her dad was an Air Force sergeant, master sergeant, like my dad, and we met at a party, and we ended up getting married. And when I got out in September of '71, we were engaged. So that's the reason I did not re-enlist. Make a long story short, her family's from Hungary initially, and she had some relatives there still at that time. But at that time, that was behind the Iron Curtain.
Right.
So I had a top secret clearance, and that wasn't going to work with that situation.
All right.
So they had given me some options when I got out, and none of them were really great. So I decided to get out. Make a long story short. So I was in from September of '67 till September of '71. So that's my story.
Very good. Very good. How about you, Bill?
I joined later. I was October of '74, probably about 9 months before we were pulling out. And when I went to tech school, went Lackland like you, and then tech school was in Illinois, right by Champaign.
Oh, yeah.
And then and that was nice. I hitchhiked, steal a ride, whatever, come home on the weekends here, back and forth. And then went Little Rock Air Force Base was my home base. But like I said, we were pulling out. They sent a bunch of us, our squadron, over to Philippines. And that was like landing in Disneyland for a young, naive guy. Okay. But needless to say, if we went, the guys who went into Vietnam, it was just like 5 hours taking stuff over, coming back. I was trained as an aircraft mechanic, and then they specialized me into jet engines. Occasionally, I was a flight engineer on them, and I got good at my job. So after that, came back to Little Rock, learned how to, from scratch, building the GTCs, just give me a box of parts and building it. And I got good at my job, so I got to travel. I went to the Azores for a heartbeat, went to Germany for a heartbeat, went to England for 4.5 months, played war games down in the panhandle of Florida with all the different branches of the military for like 7 weeks. And, my time went real quick. I went to Pope Air Force Base for 5 days because they didn't know how to fix this engine. So I got there, put the part on, and had to sit 4 days to get a ride back. But, life sometimes, you do what you have to do,
Right.
Wasn't all fun, but, you made the best of it. And I ended up getting out in '78 and having to do 2 reserve years. So that's my story.
So, thanks for sharing.
Oh, wait, the first ass whooping the worst ass whooping I ever had. Okay, just saying it, got to put it out there, was 3 Marines at O'Hare Airport. And it's the last time I wore my uniform when I traveled. I had my khakis on. I walked in the bathroom. And there's 3 Marines, and I'm like, okay, maybe, I don't want to get into it. And then at that time, you're in shape. You go for it. So I get done pissing, get to the mirror. I look, check my gig line, make sure everything's lined up. I start walking out. And then one Marine looks at me and he goes, hey, didn't they teach you better than that to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom? I said, dude, in the Air Force, they did better than that. They taught us not to piss on our hands. So, needless to say, I went home with a few bruises.
And that's when the fight ensued.
They knew I was there, though.
Oh,
Let me just say that.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, how am I supposed to follow up with that?
Hey, things happen,
You wanted stories.
Yeah, you got one.
Do you have a story like that, Tom?
No, I do not.
No, Tom washed his hands.
I mean, I can laugh now.
Yeah.
I can laugh now.
I could piggyback on your experience a little bit, though. Like
There
I
you go.
mentioned, like I mentioned earlier, my dad was in the Air Force for 30 years, and he was a crew chief on B-52s.
All right.
And we were on Guam actually for 2 years, and many other places too as a dependent. Glasgow, in Montana, and Spokane in Washington, and we were down in Moody Air Force Base and where's that, Georgia for a while, and then over Texas. We bounced all around. But anyway, he was a mechanic also, B-52's crew chief, and when we were on Guam, his aircraft was one of the first that bombed Vietnam. So that's a little bit of a story there.
Yep.
And then, of course, we kept bombing the whole time we were there.
Wow.
But we were close to the Philippines. You were probably at Clark Air Force.
Yes, absolutely.
Anderson and Guam. So, it's a small world. I mean, the Air Force is a family, and everybody has a story, and it intertwines with somebody else's story. So it's kind of fun to be here today and meet you and get to your story.
Different years.
Yeah,
same.
different years, but same situation.
Yep.
Now, what was your job? What did you do on a daily basis?
Well, I was an administrative specialist, so I just did all administrative work. I don't have anything really exciting to say about that. But like I mentioned, when I was in Alaska, I was the administrative specialist at the NCO Academy, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I actually graduated from there too before I left, so I have that on my resume. But that was kind of interesting. The students, we had our own barracks. And it was the complete school was in one barrack. So the students would come in for, I think it was 2 weeks. And they lived in the barracks and stayed in the barracks. And they marched over back and forth to the chow hall. Well, I also lived in the barracks, which was kind of neat. I didn't have to barrack or pair up with anybody else. I had my own room and everything. It was kind of cool. So when the students weren't there, they go up for 2 weeks and then they were off for 2 weeks. And that gave the instructors chances change the questions and do all that kind of thing. So I had the whole barracks to myself. That was kind of cool. Very, very unusual.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It was, like I said before, it was a really great assignment. I hated to give it up. I could have stayed there, but I had the chance to go back into the warm climate, so I took it. Now, Anchorage is a beautiful place. I mentioned that before. You guys probably already know that, but there's a lot of things to do, in the summertime, fishing and camping and doing all that kind of stuff. And then in the wintertime, I skied and hunted and did all kind. You have to keep busy when you're at these places,
Sure.
as you well know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go crazy.
You're
If you
isolated.
sit in
Yeah.
a room all day long. So I was very active and did all that kind of stuff. So that's about the most exciting thing I can say. San Antonio, I played a lot of softball, both slow pitch and fast pitch, and I even played a little bit in the Mexican American League on weekends. But that kept my time busy too when I wasn't working at the base.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good gig there too. I played fast pitch softball and I played it for the command, so I didn't really kind of showed up for work and then left. For practice. So practice took up a lot of my time versus working.
Yeah.
So I can't complain about that either.
Yep. Similar 1 year, I got to, for about 7 months, I played for the base team,
There you go.
fast pitch. And that was my job for 7 months, playing baseball,
Trying to
man.
travel a lot.
Life was good.
Yeah, I was on the command team, so we
Yeah.
traveled everywhere.
Yeah, we'd get on a 130 and
Yep.
fly somewhere and play
Absolutely.
them for a couple days and then come back.
Everything intertwined.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
What was your favorite?
What?
What was your favorite thing being in the Air Force?
Well, playing baseball, I enjoyed like hell. I hadn't played for like 4 years. And when I first tried to hit, I was missing by a mile. And then I just got a ball one day and just started doing it. And it all came back and I had speed then. I could run, I could catch,
Yeah, I remember
throw.
those.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think we all-
The legs work better.
My wife tells a story. She says she didn't even think I owned any civilian clothes. Because you see me in my uniform or you see me in my baseball uniform.
There
That
you
was
go.
it, You know?
What else did you need? That's it. So if you can remember, and this is what I find fascinating because my son's active duty Navy right now. Go back to boot camp, right? Now, boot camp, what was the most shocking revelation for boot camp for you as a young man going in? that really opened your eyes and goes, oh, this is the real deal here?
Well, my hair, I got it in a ponytail now. When I went in, it was below my shoulders.
Oh,
And everyone that was lined up, the 48 of us, you could tell who had long hair because there was just like scissor cuts and stuff. I didn't. So when they sat me in the chair, you know how fast they go. He sat me down, cut out the middle, turned me, and he goes, how's that? You look like Bozo now, you know? Serious. And I was like, it's for real now. And he finished it. And you rub your hair, it's like 80 grit sandpaper, man.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's and then after that, they kept you busy. Every day you were marching, you were going somewhere. They called us rainbows for about the first 4 days because
really?
not everything was set for us. So we were still in our civilian, but we had the field jacket, and that was it. You go down, you march to chow, you come back, and clean the barracks. You go somewhere, you come back, everything's thrown around the barracks. Clean the barracks.
Wow.
Over and over. And but the haircut, yeah, that woke me up.
Yeah, that makes
This is
everybody.
real.
Yep.
What did I do?
Yep. How about you? Anything?
Well, when I went in, I pretty much knew what to expect because my dad,
Yeah.
like I said, was in. So that's not really a fair question for me.
Right.
But there were some things that they knew that I was
boy.
dependent. So some guys gave me some extra rope. Some
Mhm.
guys didn't give me any rope at all. So I was kind of bounced back and forth. But I ended up getting on the better side and became a guidon bearer. If you guys know what that is, that's
No.
where you walk ahead of everybody in the formation with the flag.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And you go in, you eat first and everything, but you come out first,
And the road guards.
and everybody lines up behind you and road guard, all of that.
Yeah, the Lackland
That was-
lasers.
right. At that point, that was one of the better jobs, on in basic training.
Sure.
And then I carried that with me all the way through tech school too. It's a red rope, if you know what that is,
Yep.
a yellow rope, when leadership type.
Back then, you had the rope.
Right.
And people respected it.
Mhm.
It was like he's right underneath the sergeant.
Right. Yeah.
You
The
know.
yellow ropes in tech school were in charge of like a section of the barracks,
Okay.
if you will. And sometimes there were 4 yellow ropes. Sometimes there were 6. It all depended on
Right.
what kind of barracks you were in.
Squads.
Right.
Yeah.
Squads and all that kind of thing. And then the red rope was in charge of the whole barracks. So you'd get everybody together, and they'd line up behind you. And then you would march them to chow, and you'd march them back from chow, and you would go march them everywhere, school, wherever you were going. So it was kind of an interesting thing on my part. I think I ended up with those positions because I did have a little bit of background.
Sure.
How
Guys
did you,
respected that.
how did you get the ropes?
You earned them.
Oh,
You earned
okay.
them. Basically, just being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be.
Right.
But again, I think these people gave me the ropes based on my experience with my dad, being in the Air Force. I got a little bit of favoritism, if you will. But I had earned that in basic training, and then it just followed through with tech school. Once you leave tech school, though, you don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
You're just another person.
Yeah.
Another guy.
Yep. I remember the red rope, in basic, like I said, you respected them, and, basic training was just, it was so fast, changing so fast for me that, we had 8 weeks and then they gave us 2 weeks of combat training. I'm going, this is the Air Force. No, we had to go through the obstacle course every day,
Sure. Yep.
through the crawling under the barbed wire and the bombs going up, or grenades, simulated
Yeah, I
grenades.
went through all that too. Yeah, sure.
And it's like, man, I'm in the Air Force. I'm gonna be at the airport,
Yeah,
but
one thing that's jumping out at me now as we're speaking to was when we got our orders.
Okay.
That was really something.
Yeah.
Because you knew when they took you there that you were going somewhere, but you didn't know where, right?
Yep.
You had no idea.
Yep.
and they would call off your name, then they would give you your orders. And they would say, you're going here, you're going to Germany, you're going to England, you're going to Vietnam.
Right.
I take that back. Out of basic, you went to training.
Training.
And
Yep.
you didn't know what you were going to be. You had no idea. I mean,
didn't
you had
get
an
to
idea,
choose.
like mechanics knew they were going to
Right.
be. When you took your scores,
Yeah.
Oh, it's all.
when you took your scores, they
Yeah.
did it on mechanics, electronics,
Right.
administrative, and something else. I don't know.
I was guaranteed a job,
Yeah. Oh, well, there you
or
go.
I could have got out. But like you said, with the orders,
Yeah.
the last 3 days in basic, they played with your mind. They
Yeah,
give
they
you
did.
orders, and like I'm going, holy cow! I'm going to go be munition specialist.
Mhm.
Why? I'm supposed to be working on planes,
Right.
Yeah.
and the next day I'm going to be a cook, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And then finally, the last day was your actual orders.
Wow.
So,
that's true. Yeah. That's how it went.
Yep.
It was
Just
a big
being
deal.
ready
I
to
mean, you
go.
really had no idea.
well, they mess with your mind.
Yeah. And
You know.
they told me, to be administrative specialist. I thought I was going to be an air traffic controller,
Yep.
because that's all part of the administrative. And I had high scores, and I thought, okay, administrative. Nope. You go to administration. They put you where they need you. Let's put it that way.
So
Right.
So I spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 months up in Amarillo, Texas, which is a really beautiful spot. Let me tell you,
a lot of good.
there's a
country
girl
songs.
behind every tree.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's no trees.
with an armadillo, right?
Yeah, right.
They're wandering like puppies.
Cold and windy, and it was in the wintertime. Oh, and marching back and forth to the barracks. Oh my God, it was horrible.
Yeah.
I
Christ, you
couldn't
knew-
wait to get out.
Try Chanute in February.
And then
Back
No.
then.
same thing happens with tech school. You go to tech school, you earn your certificate, and then you wait for your orders. And after tech school, then you could go to Vietnam. I mean, that was like 80% of the people that got orders went to Vietnam.
Hmm.
And they make you go on, they make you line up, and then they call your name, and then they tell you where you're going to go. And everybody's, oh. And then going to Germany. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Then
on the way.
They waited for me because I had to wait for orders. I think I waited for orders in a red rope in the grad barracks for probably 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time for I got my
Yeah.
orders. I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting them. And then it became a joke, with the sergeants. Blum's, he's still here today. That was how they started it. Blum, you're not getting anything.
Nope.
And I'm like, oh man. And then they said, the day I got mine was like a celebration day. My orders. And they said, you're going to a beautiful spot, Kotzebue Air Force Station in Alaska. I had never heard of it. I
Right.
called my dad. Dad, what's Kotzebue? Yeah, it was that was really something. That was
Wow.
a real experience, an eye opener. Let me tell you. A lot of
Sure.
my friends went to Vietnam, and they're right next to you, and they were going. They knew they were going to go. They pretty much figured it out,
Yeah.
I thought that's where I was going to go to. I guess I lucked out and didn't have to go.
Yeah, like you said, I was on admin leave after tech school, sitting at Chanute just for like 3 or 4 weeks. And they put me in, they roomed me with a bomb navigator back then, which these guys were like professors in math. They could teach it. And this guy, he made his own rules because the class started with 30 some people and they were down after a year and a half to only 6 people. So this guy could,
Wow.
short of murdering someone, they let him go. The SP's hands off. I go drinking with him and let him just get us in trouble, and he'd get us right out of trouble. I'd stand back. Hey man, I didn't do nothing. And then this guy would just tell him who he is, and commander would come and take him away,
Get
take
you
us
home.
away.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't me, but this guy would he's that friend where you go somewhere and he's going to make a problem.
Oh,
You know what I mean? There's always
I got a
one of
business
them.
partner
And,
like that. Yeah.
and he enjoyed the shit out of it though.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think to answer your question, though, getting the haircut and getting your orders were 2 of the big deals.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of anxiety.
And you're permanent, the base they sign you to, the first one, because I got there and you got to check in.
Mhm.
You know no one.
No, right. Nobody.
There's a sponsor comes and picks you up.
Mhm.
That's what happened to me at some gas station. The bus dropped me and He drove me on, got me to the barracks, and he said, "See ya."
You're on your own.
And then, you got to go everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's like, where's this? Well, if you knew how the base was, okay, you got to go to supply, admin, you got to go here and there to check in. Well, they put the list where you go there first, then here, where if you knew what you were doing, start here, but they don't tell you that. They're just,
Walk in and
if
you
they could
report
mess
and-
with your mind, they do it.
Yeah, you
You
go
know,
to the barracks.
not saying any of the other services have it that way, but
Yeah, you show up at the barracks and that was it.
Yeah.
Checked in at the barracks and then you didn't know anybody, not a soul.
Yep.
I remember when I checked into San Antonio, I drove down there.
yeah,
Because I came out of Alaska. I went home for 2 or 3 weeks, got a car, drove down to Texas, walked into the barracks and said, I'm Sergeant Blum, checking in. Oh, okay. And he went through the whole thing. This is what you got to do. So I thought, well, I'll go back. They assigned me a room. I'll go back and, start unloading my stuff. Lock my keys in the car. Welcome to San Antonio. Cost me
It's the
$50,
Texas way.
or whatever
Yeah.
it was, to have somebody come and pick it up. That's a funny story for you.
yeah.
They're like, oh, we got the ringer now. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah,
we
right.
got
That went
Blum
over.
here.
That went over well. I had to live that thing for 6 months. Oh my God.
Yep.
You don't know anybody. And that's a thing that's pretty universal, being in the service. And as myself being a dependent, I went to 3 different high schools.
Yeah.
I went to high school in Glasgow, Montana. I went to high school in Guam. And then I left Guam in my senior year and went back home to our family's home in Pennsylvania, graduated from there. So 3 different high schools.
Wow.
So you show up at a base and most of the time you don't know anybody and
Yeah.
you're a young kid.
Oh,
That's a hard thing. Then you
Yeah.
have to leave. That's another hard thing.
just
No.
when you kind of get those relationships. Then.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that's the same thing with
Yeah.
regular people. I mean, to this day, though, I still have friends from the service. And I've been out of the service now 50 some years.
A couple of years, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
years. But we still keep in touch, with social media, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I find that pretty interesting. That just the bond that you brothers make, and then one person goes to one side of the world, and years later you're still connected and you still share that brotherhood, and you still celebrate things and mourn things. But to me, friends are different than the guys that you were in service with, obviously. Of that, were there some that you showed up and go, I really don't like you, and then ended up becoming pretty close with them, or no?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah. You had attitude towards a few people, and then as you got to know them, things change.
Yeah.
And, but it's like in life too, but there is a different bond
Yeah.
you were in, you knew somebody had your back and you had their back, and that's how it was.
Yeah, I mean, you probably ended up taking your buddy to the bathroom with you a couple times, Bill. Just there, so.
No, I don't think
Just
so.
sit there, Robert.
After that, yeah, it'll hear, hey, guard the door, like 30 does it,
That's right.
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah.
Was there someone that you looked up to while you were serving?
The one guy who really impressed me was at my home base in Little Rock was Chief Master Sergeant Hobbs. This guy, he could quote you chapter and verse out of the repair manual, and it's like this thick for one of the engines. And the guy was down to earth. And there was we had a major who was enlisted and then became an officer.
Mhm.
And this guy, if he didn't have the leaves on his uniform, you would have thought he was a sergeant or an airman, because he treated everybody the same way.
Wow.
Where some of these guys, like 90-day wonders they had when I was in.
Right.
These guys got out of college, they go to basic for 90 days, and they come out as a captain. Some of them learn to fly and stuff, and I'm down on the flight line one time, coming to check this plane, and this guy started feeding me shit, same age, but he's a captain and I'm a sergeant. He started feeding me crap, and I said, well, sir, I'm going to look at this for you, and he wouldn't stop. So I pulled out my pencil, took the red end of it and put an X in the logbook. I go, you can't fly today. You can't do that. And I go, I just did. There's a fuel leak on number 3 engine, which means he was scheduled for that plane. He can't get another one that day.
Yeah.
And near the end of the month, if they don't get their time, they got to recertify, which he had to do.
Yeah.
And the next time he met me, he was very nice.
Yeah, a little different tone.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are things the enlisted guys could do, but if you treat people nice, they'll treat you nice.
Right.
100%.
I mean, I could be an asshole.
No.
That's just something I learned at basic.
How about you, Tom?
Oh,
Is there
well,
someone-
again, at the leadership school, there were some really sharp guys there as instructors, and there was a few that really stood out. And I looked up to them, and they were just as sharp as could be, some of the sharpest looking Air Force people you ever met.
Sure.
Because they were trying to set an example for the students that they didn't come in looking bad at all, ever. And their attitudes were always at the top of the list. So
Right.
there was a couple of guys there at that. And down in San Antonio, I had some experience working with the general while I was there on some things that we did together. And he was a sharp cookie too. I really looked up to him a lot. General Stapleton was his name. And we did some alerts together and spent some time, really close time together out in the bush, on alerts, training sessions. And he never looked out of place ever. And he would always give you as much time as you needed. So I looked up to him also.
Yeah.
Two people.
Well, you'll probably agree with me. When we were in, a lot of the older enlisted personnel, they were smarter than the officers, but at the time they joined, they didn't have college.
Right.
And, like Chief Master Sergeant Hobbs, I put him up against any colonel or general. This guy was so smart, but they joined before they had college, and, they just moved right up the rank because just like anyone else,
Right, exactly.
you're smart, you're going to move up. And,
That's true.
yeah, back then, you didn't know who you were dealing with right away. So,
Well, like we were
Right.
talking before we went on the air, back when we were in service, you had to earn your stripes.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no give anything like today. Like I have a cousin that lives in Pennsylvania, and he has 3 kids, and all of them are in the service, which is very respectable.
Mm-hmm.
And his daughter, I seen a picture. He had a picture of him and his kids, and they all had all their stripes on. And his daughter was the senior master sergeant.
Oh boy.
And she couldn't have been 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And it's just that all they have to do is take a test. Study a little something, take a test. Oh, here's your stripe.
yep. You
Back when
score
I was,
high
they-
enough.
they-
Yeah.
You wanted a stripe, you had to earn it. I mean, it was hard to do that, especially in 4-year enlistment.
Right.
So we made it to sergeants, which was
Right.
about as far as you could go. If you were a staff sergeant under 4 years, you were special,
Yep.
and
You
you were
had to
doing
start
something
taking-
special.
Yep. You had
You
to
had
start taking
And you
tests.
had a job that
Right.
gave you that stripe. But I mean, I couldn't get they offered me the staff sergeant to stay. When I was done with my enlistment, that was one of the perks. They said, well, we'll make you a staff sergeant, give you a line number, they called it. And I'm like, that's not good enough. But no, seriously, we had to earn our stripes back then.
Yeah.
Now you go in for 4 years, like you were saying
Yeah.
earlier, they come out of basic training as a sergeant.
Yeah.
We came out as a one striper,
Yep.
one stripe, that's all they had.
Yeah. They had, well, I told you 6-year, if you would have joined for 6, when I went in, they guarantee you to be an E3, which is 2 stripes right out of basic. And before the year's up, if you kept your nose clean, you were an E4. You're a sergeant, and you didn't know crap.
Back when we were in, sergeant was a 3-striper.
Yep.
Now it's called a senior airman.
Yeah, they make you a senior airman. That's sergeant stripes without the star.
Without the star.
And then they'll drag that on.
Mhm.
And when you make sergeant, all they do is put the star there.
That's it.
And that's the only difference.
Mm.
So that's why you'll see somebody say, I was a senior airman. Some people say,
Yeah.
oh, sergeants. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same rank, well, E4, but this way they can drag it out a little more and not pay you more, you know?
Or just
Right.
make sure you're well
Right.
trained.
Yep.
I mean, that's
Yeah, go to
That's
NCO's
right.
school and all that.
Now
That's
the
the
money
story.
too is the money too is a big difference now
Oh, sure.
between now and back then. I mean, when I was a sergeant, right before I got out, I think I was making my $300-400 a month.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
$200 every paycheck,
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know.
yeah, it wasn't much. Believe me, was not much.
15th and the last day of the month.
Yeah, I was lucky. When I got out on a Friday and went to work for the city of San Antonio on the following Monday.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. You know, they were hiring vets at that time, and I became a tax appraiser for the city of San Antonio. I was making 4 times more than when I was making.
And that's something.
I thought that was the greatest thing in the
You were
world.
buying the drinks that
Yeah,
week.
you did that right. Oh, yeah, that was a big change, but it's like,
Sure.
wow, this is amazing. And then you figure, how can I live on that money? You
I-
know, But
yeah.
we could eat free.
That's right.
Don't get me wrong.
That's
You can
right.
eat free. You can live free
Yep.
in the barracks.
Just had to buy your ammunition to hunt and your bait to fish.
Yeah, right.
You're
I mean,
fine.
medical was free. Everything was free.
Yep.
Yeah.
But still $300. That was back too when the gasoline was like 50 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show my age.
And egg for 10 cents a day.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. They're almost free.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
I met a chief master sergeant about last summer. He was visiting my neighbor. He got out after 31 years and he had like 5 years in rank. And his retirement pay, it's full pay for the rest of his life. And I go, what do you get a month? And he goes, well, with Social Security, disability and everything, 18 grand a month, tax-free money. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, back when we were in, it's like, you're not making that much money, but they take care of their guys now. You go the full term, man. 30 years is full pay.
Yeah, my dad was 30 years and he got out. He was back in the day when they wasn't making a lot of money.
Sure.
He went right to work. You know, he was a truck driver out of a small town in Indiana, delivering transit things like mail trucks, UPS vehicles, that kind of thing. And he had to go get a second job. I mean,
Yeah.
He wasn't making much
Right.
money. He didn't have to
Yeah.
do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's different
Yep.
world now.
It is.
But God bless them. You know, they're still enlisted. They're still doing the service for their country.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Got to give them credit for that.
Hats off to them.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing to me.
So what tools would you say you gained in the Air Force that you were able to carry on when you left?
Oh, that's easy for me. I had leadership experience, which was like almost management experience, and then I lucked out and got that job as a tax appraiser, which gave me. And then I became a senior tax appraiser a couple of years, or a year into that, and so I had the management experience. I left there. I came to Chicago. I went to work for Amtrak as a payroll clerk. So I had the administrative
Yep.
experience that I just brought along with me. But I was only a payroll clerk for 1 year, and they promoted me, to lead payroll clerk.
Wow.
Nice.
And then I worked there as a lead for another couple of years or a year or so, and then I went into personnel. I left Amtrak after 14 years. I started as a payroll clerk and left as a division manager of personnel
Wow.
for the central region here in Chicago.
Wow. You got all the headaches.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then I walked across the street and went to work for Metro, the railroad there.
Sure.
You guys all familiar with Metro.
Yep, yep.
I was a personnel manager. I went there as a personnel manager and I left as a director
Wow.
after 23 years. So I had 37 years with the railroad. And I think that basically all the administrative experience and leadership experience that I had in the service definitely gave me
Sure.
an edge up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to work on time. I never missed a day, and when I was a director of HR, of course, I was doing all the hiring, and we would definitely give veterans preference.
Sure. I
for
still
those
think we should.
reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they were disciplined.
Yeah.
You know, they appreciated the work. They came in every day, worked every day, didn't give you any trouble. You know, versus people off the street, they come in there, well, I want 4 weeks of vacation.
Right.
Like that ain't gonna happen. You know? But the veterans are really good.
Yeah.
So I think that's what gave me the up.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I learned early on after I got out that I was more adept at working in the field rather than the office. I knew my jobs and I learned them. They'd kick me in the office, and the first time, like a week and a half, I said, "Dudes, this ain't gonna work. You know, I got to be down there." You know, it's just, if you know anything about me, politics isn't one thing. You know, I'm going to tell it the way it is.
Sure.
You know?
I didn't get that from you.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you, if you screwed up, I'm going to call you on it. Oh, yeah, it's just life's too short, and let's get it over with. Let's move on. But
Yeah.
I get in trouble with that sometimes. But hey, I moved to another job. I learned how. Well, let's say I learned foreign cars really well.
Nice.
I worked on anything from Bentleys on down to a lawnmower. I did it all. And I learned how to rebuild engines while I was in. And places I worked, they have to have a rebuild. Boom, it come to me because it was very methodical how they taught you. When we took an engine apart in a jet engine, sometimes, you're looking at 5,000 pieces, nuts and bolts and everything. Take the bolts off of the turbine, put them in a Ziploc and mark it. Well, I didn't have to go that far, but I'd set everything out and somebody goes, who's working here? Oh, Bill is. You could tell,
Right.
I had the valve sitting, instead of
Yeah.
a pile. You could have thrown it all in a pile and I would have straightened it out. But, that's what I like to do. I was a mechanic. And then after I got clean and sober, it was a whole different thing, because at like 3 PM, you're pounding beers, lighting a joint, but I wasn't doing that anymore. So I had a friend, had a construction company, ended up with him for like 7 years, driving the trucks, fixing them, working concrete. And I thought, man, this is great. I'm getting paid to stay in shape, and we worked year round. I couldn't believe it. And after the 7th year, one day he walked up and said, "You guys need to go unemployment." And I'm like, really? And I ended up having the mechanic again, and got married, and it just, the mechanicing was a joy for me. But then after I got married and kids, I had to do it. And it's just, to this day, I don't like it. I still know how to do it. I'll work on my car. That's it, But it's just, it ruined it for me, man.
You took the fun out of
Hey,
it.
the best part was a Saturday night, some beers, some loud music, working on somebody's car till 2, 3 in the morning. And waking the neighbors up because we didn't have a muffler on. Yeah, that was fun, but now it's not.
Well, you learned all those good skills on.
Yes, the skills in the Air Force.
Yeah.
I
It's not
when I worked at Burris, I worked for them for 10 years. Burris Equipment's a heavy equipment place. And there was another Air Force guy, and they took, we tear stuff apart and have to order parts and put it together. Well, this guy got sick, and there was a machine he was working on, and the boss was used to be a CB. He comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you think you could put that together for George?" I go, "He was in the Air Force. I'm sure I can." And walked over. It looked like I laid the parts out, so.
Wow.
And it's not that I never did that job, but I knew what I was walking into.
Sure.
Right.
So, there's things you expect, and they did teach me how to do that. Before before I went in, just a box, and then you have to sort through it. But
Yeah.
it's better to keep things neat.
Yeah, for sure. And organize that way you can find it.
Yep.
So we're just about finished. I guess just
Oh,
last
come
thought.
on.
I know.
We're having fun, right?
Recording will stop. We can still hang out at the piano.
So, let me think of something for closing thoughts.
How shiny
What?
were your shoes?
Spit shine.
Yep,
You know, if you have to get
absolutely.
the Spit shine.
That's a
Yep.
gimme. That's a
At-
gimme.
Yeah.
At the NCO Academy, I
Yep.
mean, you had to be sharp.
Yep.
Really, even me. I was in the office, but I was visible. So I had to have spit shine. My shoes were spit shine.
Yeah.
My uniform was just sparkling.
Yep.
So the question I would ask to kind of wrap it up maybe
Okay.
is what would you tell that 18-year-old or 17-year-old on why,
That's where I was going.
service with the Air Force is a good way to go and a good way to direct your life?
Well, I think it just basically what we've been talking about here recently in this conversation is it'll take you a long way.
Mhm.
It'll get you into doors that you otherwise could not have entered. Because they're going to teach you a skill, number one, but they're also going to teach you the real world and what to expect when you get into it.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, being to work on time,
Mhm.
saying yes or no, sir, doing what you're told, and doing your job the way it's intended to be done. Now I can speak that way because as a director of human resources, recruitment was one of my things.
Yeah.
Actually, I was the department head of recruitment for Metro. So I did all hiring, all promotions, all transfers. And that's what I would look for would be veterans, because I knew if I hired a veteran, I would never have to have them in my office for anything other than to say hi,
Sure.
because they were going to be there, they were going to do a good job, they're going to get it done, and they were going to be respected by their workers and their supervisors.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell them. And I always recommend the service. That doesn't have to be the Air Force. It could be any branch of the service. When I talk to kids, I have 3 sons. None of them went into the service, which is okay.
Yeah.
But if they would have, then I would have told them what to expect.
Sure.
And some of their friends did go into the service. And I had long talks with them. Actually, my nephew called me, and he said, Uncle Tom, he said, I'm thinking about going to the Navy. He said, what do you think? I said, that's an option you should take. And he went all the way through senior chief warrant officer.
Wow.
Just retired about a year ago.
I'll be darned.
So, and he loved it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that's what I would say.
Nice.
You get to see the world too, if you really
there's no
want
doubt
it.
about that.
If you, 18-year-old, you just tell them to learn not to expect something, take it as it comes, because you have an opportunity. Like me, I learned my job well, and I got to travel a lot, short little stints, a week, 2 weeks, 4 months, and time goes by. And then when you want to go to another country, raise your hand.
Sure.
And, learn everything they'll tell you. They put you basic, and basic gets you set, and then tech school. I'll tell you what, any idiot can go to tech school. I mean, they hold your hand through everything and learn it. And before you leave, every test, you're going to get an ace, and that's how they want it. And then after that, you just go.
I don't know how it is today, but when I was in the service, you had the option of changing your job too.
Yes.
After you reached a certain level, you had the option. Well, can I move into here? And you go to personnel and you can talk to them, and you can say, I think I'd like to be an air traffic controller. Right now I'm an administrative specialist, typing
Right.
and doing this, but I think I'd like to be an air traffic controller. And then they would study you and look at what your scores were and so forth and so on. And if there was an opportunity, you could move over.
Right.
And it sends you to tech school from where you were, and you can move over and become that. So I'm assuming that that's the way it is today. I would hope it would be today.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot to say.
So there's a lot to be said about that, because like I said, when you come out of basic training, you don't really have a whole lot to say.
Right.
Unless you've been guaranteed something. Now,
Right.
I remember, I think a while back, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they were doing that type thing.
Yeah.
They would take you into the military and they would give you the opportunity to get into exactly what you wanted, and they would guarantee it. Well, there was no guarantee, but,
Yeah.
but I mean, that would be nice too.
Right. Right.
So changing and getting what you want is a perfect thing for someone who doesn't really know coming out of high school. And we all know that nobody knows that.
Right.
I mean, I got
Right.
grandkids going to college next year, and they seem to know what they're doing, but I don't know where they'll land in that.
Yeah, and even in college, they changed their minds
Oh.
too. So
I have 3 sons. They all went to college, and none of them knew what they wanted to do
That's
until
right.
they were like in their latter part of their sophomore, maybe even their junior year.
right, right.
That's why I went in the Air Force, because all my brothers and sisters went to college, and I just knew I'd be pissing my money away. I would be let free, and
Yep, it's not for
class
everybody.
wasn't optional.
Another thing too, to answer your question, in talking to kids like coming out of high school,
Yeah.
not knowing what they want to do, the military is a perfect thing to do because you can go in there and they will pay for your education.
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
And I'm a perfect example for that. I went to night school. I went to University of Alaska. I went to San Antonio, and then when I got out, I got my degrees.
Yeah.
What do you call it? I can't remember now what they call it. GI Bill.
GI
Yep.
GI Bill.
Oh.
And they were paying me to go to school.
Yep.
And it was the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I had 3 kids, and they would give me so much to go, and they always had a little bit left over. I said, "This is a good gig."
Yeah.
So I went and got my degree.
I got my AMP license through that.
There you
And then just recent, probably about 8 years ago, I went through culinary school at the
Really?
college. Yeah.
Wow.
Great program, man. And then, okay, Wednesday night, they're having an open house, and they're going to have the kids that are in the class cooking and bringing stuff out to you. So just head by MCC and eat free.
Oh,
There
that's
you go.
cool.
Very
that's
cool.
really
I'm
cool.
going to put you to
But
work.
that's a good answer to your question.
Yeah, that's
too,
a
I
great
think.
answer. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
very important.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show and sharing your story.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your service in
Thank
the
you
Air
very
Force.
much,
We
yeah.
appreciate you
It's been a lot of
Okay.
and all
fun.
you've
Great.
done.
Great.
So that's all for today, guys. We'll catch you later.
Well, wait, is the check in the mail?
Yeah.
Keep looking for
Yeah.
it. Keep looking
Keep
for
looking
it.
for it. Yep.
Creator Studios, your gateway to professional podcasting. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just starting, 216 Creator Studios offers state-of-the-art podcast studios designed to meet all your recording needs. From crystal clear audio quality to a comfortable creative space, we've got you covered. With fully equipped rooms, expert support, and flexible booking options, you can focus on what matters most, your content. Join us and bring your voice to life in the best environment for podcast creation. 216 Creator Studios is here to help you create something extraordinary.